Will Donald Trump get another judge onto the Supreme Court? After the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the US president looks set to replace her in record time. But with an election around the corner, would it really be the right call? I'm Ali Aslan, and today on The Newsmakers, we look at the battle to pick the next Supreme Court justice. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the staunchest liberals on America's conservative-leaning court, and her death has triggered an important but bitter political battle. Whoever names the next justice will likely shape the Supreme Court for decades. Donald Trump says he'll announce his nominee this weekend, but with an election just weeks away, his rivals say he's abusing his power, and that includes Joe Biden. The Democratic candidate has urged the Senate to reject Trump's choice and allow the American people to vote before Ginsburg is replaced. So, should Trump wait, or is he well within his rights to fill the vacant seat as soon as possible? That debate in just a moment, but first, Adam Platz reports.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of the 9 US Supreme Court justices, passed away last Friday. The 87-year-old had been battling cancer for years. Ginsburg was President Bill Clinton's choice for the court in 1993 and was only the second woman to be appointed. She was a tireless campaigner for liberal causes and human rights, in particular women's equality, which had made her arguably the most prominent and widely respected of the justices.
She was my hero before I was born, and I didn't know it for a long time. She's the reason that I can be a lawyer. She's the reason that women can't legally be discriminated against. So she means a lot to us.
Her legacy will live on in the laws she helped to establish, protecting women's rights to equal pay and employment, among many others. Replacing Ginsburg in the Supreme Court is shaping up to be one of the major issues in the upcoming election. Incumbent President Donald Trump wants to proceed with his nomination for the court before votes are cast in November.
The process will move. I think it's going to move very quickly, actually. I agree with the statement put out by Mitch McConnell. I agree with it actually 100%. I put out a very similar statement you saw. So I think we're going to start the process extremely soon, and we'll have a nominee very soon.
But in 2016, the Senate Majority Leader, Republican Mitch McConnell, had refused to back President Obama's nomination on the grounds that he only had 11 months left in office. Democrats, including candidate Joe Biden, argue that the people must first choose a president who in turn will pick the next justice.
It was only 46 days off. I think the fastest justice ever confirmed was 47 days, and the average is closer to 70 days. And so we should do this with full consideration, and that is my hope and expectation what will happen.
Supreme Court justices take office for life, so their selection can affect politics and society for decades. If Trump does select the next justice, it will leave the court leaning 6-3 in favor of conservative picks. And for this reason, Ginsburg had specifically said she did not want to be replaced until a new president is installed. With the election only 6 weeks away, is it hypocritical of Republicans to rush their choice through the Senate when they obstructed Obama's choice for months? And if they do so, might it actually end up hurting Trump's chances of re-election? Adam Platz, The Newsmakers.
Well, let's go to San Diego now, where I am joined by former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman. He also served as a law clerk to Supreme Court Justices Thurgood Marshall and Anthony Kennedy. In Washington, D.C., we have John Malcolm. He's the director of the Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. And Tina Datta is the country director of Republicans Overseas in Singapore. Harry, before we get into the nuts and bolts about the succession of RBG, let's talk briefly about her legacy. What has been her impact been on American life during her reign as a Supreme Court Justice?
Well, you have to think both of her reign and her role as an advocate. Unlike any justice except maybe Thurgood Marshall, she had a very important first act where she basically, as an advocate, advanced the law of equality and went very far toward establishing a principle of constitutional equality based on gender. And she obviously perpetuated that when she was on the court. I would say if you're thinking of one kind of headline of her achievement, that would be it, both as a judge and as a lawyer.
Yeah, certainly has blossomed into somewhat of a larger-than-life figure in previous years, and certainly now, Harry. Donald Trump, of course, has some experience in appointing Supreme Court justices. He's already had the privilege of appointing two of them, but both were conservatives replacing conservatives. This one, of course, would have a much wider impact, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so it's pivotal. And as your report suggested, it is, of course, rank hypocrisy. There's no possible suggestion that what McConnell said in 2016 about Obama's nominee doesn't apply here. You've had some Republicans lamely try to say, well, that's because different parties controlled. But that's not what Trump said or McConnell said at the time. It was let the people decide. Be that as it may, it's going to be law of the jungle. There's no, it's of course one of the biggest, most flagrant acts of hypocrisy in American political history, but they're already past that and just thinking of ramming it through because the stakes are in fact so high. Even if this means that's it for Trump, he ends with 3 justices as Obama had 2 over 8 years. He gets lucky, as it were, that way. They're ready to pay that price as well as the price of being accused justifiably of hypocrisy.
The stakes are indeed quite high, John. The replacement, of course, would turn the court to the right. What do you make of the hypocrisy argument? Mitch McConnell, of course, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell prevented a vote when Anthony Scalia died in 2016, which was also an election year. He refused to act on Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland, and the seat then remained empty, of course, as we know, and vacant until after election. Isn't it the same here?
Well, let me, before I get to that, and I will, say a couple of things. One, Vice President Biden is wrong. First of all, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed in 45 days. And 2, there have been instances in our nation's history in which Supreme Court justices have been confirmed on the day in which they were nominated. I also want to endorse one thing that Harry said, which is everything that he said about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I absolutely agree with. The one person actually who was not hypocritical was Mitch McConnell. He always said the day after Antonin Scalia died that the reason they weren't going to take up the nomination was because the presidency was controlled by one party and the Senate by another. In terms of hypocrisy, there are a lot of politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, who are eating the words they said in 2016. When George H.W. Bush was president, Chuck Schumer and then head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Joe Biden, said, don't bother sending us a nominee. If there is a vacancy, we will not take up that nominee. In 2016, they said, you absolutely have a duty to take up that nomination. And now they're saying it would be terrible if you did take up that nomination. So hypocrisy, if we want to call it that, and I have no problem calling it that, is served in liberal doses on the tables in Capitol Hill. And both sides are eating the words that they said in 2016. I'll add one more thing, which is over our nation's history, 19 times in an election year, there have been nominations made when the presidency and the Senate were controlled by the same party. 17 of those were confirmed. There have been 10 times where the presidency and the Senate were controlled by opposite parties. Only 2 of them were confirmed, and the last time was in 1888.
Tina, RBG, of course, now famously has said, my wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed. Democrats are crying foul, saying what Donald Trump is doing is unconstitutional or, if nothing else, illegal. Is that an argument and a reasoning that you would concur and agree with?
Actually, no, I would not concur with that at all. I'd like to say, first of all, that, Tom, I'd like to totally agree with what my associate, although we don't know each other, from the Heritage Foundation and from the Edwin Meese Foundation said. I'm much more in the side, I'm 100% on his side of what he has said. And having to do with what her wishes were, We actually, and while she is a hero to me, I'd like to state that, and I'm so grateful for everything she did for women's rights. The statements that we're hearing, we did not actually hear from her. We've heard from her daughter, and we have nothing in writing or otherwise that shows that she actually wanted that to take place. Obviously, in her last, while President Trump has been president, she had a very strong feeling and dislike for the president. I think that we need to take that into consideration with these comments that are being put out, if they were even said in the first place. And I just don't think that we need to stop moving forward. President Trump is elected, and he will hold that office until January 20th. And we are perfectly in our rights as Republicans and controlling the Senate and having a Republican president to put a nominee up for election, hopefully confirm a nominee. And this is the reason that President Trump was elected by Republicans, to do the best that we could to straighten out the country, bring it towards the more conservative perspective. We've put judges across the country, many more judges than any other president that I'm aware of. We've got the 2 Supreme Court judges from this administration now, and I'm very grateful that we have the opportunity to put this 3rd judge on the court.
Harry, what do you make of the argument that some people say, well, the Democrats would act the very same way if they had the opportunity, if the case were completely reversed and the Democrats had a chance to put a Supreme Court justice now 50 days before the election?
You know, look, I agree that hypocrisy, I think what John said, is served in liberal doses. This is a particularly flagrant one in which you have senators saying, mark my words, no way would I let somebody get by in 2020. Their pants are really down in this way. And I think what your recent speaker means when she says we have every right is, it's the law of the jungle. We do whatever the hell we want, and you can't stop us. That's might be an accurate statement, but it's certainly neither a moral or ethical one. I don't disagree that you in politics you have people make the best kind of explanations to save face they can. This one is way out there though, because there's no saving face. It is in fact a rank reversal of what was said before, and really it's just code words for same thing as maybe Ruth Ginsburg said it, maybe she didn't. It's all code words for we're going to ram it through because it's the law of the jungle, and for now anyway, we are the lions. That's really what they're saying.
Absolutely, but you do call the actions on the part of the Republicans immoral, but would you go so far as to call it illegal?
No, I agree there. In other words, in confirmation politics, the Constitution doesn't really say, it's not unconstitutional, it's rank, it's against the desires of the vast majority of the, remember, the Republicans have won the popular vote once in 7 times, and it's just the luck of the draw that this has happened. But no, it's not a constitutional infirmity, I agree.
Well, certainly this would be the 3rd Supreme Court Justice nominee on the part of Donald Trump. John, that's quite a record to have the privilege and be in a position to nominate 3 of them in only one term. But of course, Mitch McConnell will need almost every single Republican on the Senate to vote for him. There's already been some defecting arguments here and there. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I'm trying to get out of my mind Harry's imagery of the senators with their pants down. And he didn't answer actually the question. I think the Republicans know full well that if two were on the other foot, the Democrats would do exactly what the Republicans are doing now. But, you know, the question about defections, yes, they have to have at least 50 senators voting in favor of the nominee, in which case Vice President Pence would break a tie. Susan Collins of Maine has already announced that she will be a no vote if this occurs before the election. But I think that the names that are being mentioned, specifically Amy Coney Barrett and Barbara Lagoa, Allison Rushing is also being mentioned, are very impressive individuals. And I think that they will come across well during these confirmation hearings. They've all been through this process before. And I think that there will be at least 50 and probably 51 or 52 Republicans who will vote to confirm.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell can only afford to lose 3 Republicans. Interestingly enough, a very outspoken Trump critic, Mitt Romney, has come out and said he will vote in favor of Trump's nominee. Tina, of course, Donald Trump has also said that the next person he will nominate will be a woman. And interestingly enough, for many liberal women, this does not go enough, because at the end of the day, it's not enough just to nominate a woman for the sake of nominating a woman if the ideology does not fall into place. Meaning ideology does matter more than gender here, doesn't it? According to which political side you're leaning towards.
And, and I would agree with that comment. It's unfortunate that the women just can't, at least in one sentence or another, say, well, we're grateful that a woman has been nominated. We can give that credit and we support that. But you're absolutely right when it comes to ideology. There are significant differences between the American women in the United States having to do with the birth rights and job security, equal pay. There's many different things that people argue about, women in the United States, me and my friends argue about. But you're absolutely correct with that statement. However, I think we should all women in the United States should come together and at least be able to say, we're grateful and we support the fact that a woman is being put up for the Supreme Court.
Harry, having worked for 2 Supreme Court justices, you know, of course, of the power that they yield. They can shape decisions of life on abortion, voting rights, immigration, far-reaching matters and issue. And many opinions now coming down to this term were 5-4. So with a possible Donald Trump nominee, it would tilt toward 6-3. Do you think that a Supreme Court justice holds too much power? Now, we do understand the separation of power, but should a Supreme Court justice hold that much power to tilt, if you will, American life into one way or the other? Should perhaps the open-ended term be looked at as one option?
Right. Well, throughout the life of the Supreme Court, with a few exceptions, and we are about to enter one of those exceptions, the court has been divided enough that it could go either way and they could persuade one another. This is actually a bad development for the Supreme Court, and when it's happened on either side, it's brought it into historical disrepute. To have 6 people who really don't even have to listen to the 3, who can, it's just power and not reason is their currency. And especially when the 6 here really are out of step with the majority of the American people, it's a problematic situation. Now, I don't think you can say it's the individual justice that wields too much power. The court wields a lot of power. And when you have this happenstance, it's really kind of luck of the draw, as it were, that now Trump has so many, and that notwithstanding the elections of the last many years, the Republicans have had an unlikely harvest. It makes the court as a whole have too much power because it's out of step with the country as a whole. That gets corrected over time, but time here is 30 or 40 years. So it's not the justice, it's the court, and it is in some sense unfortunate.
Yeah, certainly a lot of power there. John, Donald Trump, of course, we are a few days, 50 days before a very crucial election, of course, and he was a bit on the defensive when it came to his handling of the coronavirus, of course. Do you think that this issue will give him a boost, an energizing boost that he needs 2 months before Americans head to the polls?
Sure. Let me briefly respond to something Harry just said. One is, I think that even if there were 9 justices or 8-1, these justices are very collegial and served together for a long time, and they will continue to talk to each other. I also think it is the role of a judge to determine what the law is, and not whether or not they are in step or out of step with the American people. Look, this is certainly very, very significant, and the outcome of this entire thing is going to have a dramatic effect on the electorate. It is also a reminder to Republicans and to many independents of one of the big successes of the Trump administration during its first term, which is its appointment of constitutionalist justices and judges to the lower courts of appeals. So, you know, if the discussion is about the Trump legacy on judges going into this election, I would welcome that, and he should welcome that.
Tina, do you see this as a much-needed boost for the Trump camp so shortly before the election? to rile up his voter base?
I don't think that this issue necessarily will be riling up the base. I think the base is already riled up, having to do with the issues that have been going on in the across the United States the last 12 to 16 weeks, and the larger discussions regarding law and order. I do believe that we're not exactly sure how this is going to affect the electorate, which side is going to be galvanized. And I can't say that from here from Singapore. I do have my hand on the pulse of what goes on in the United States, but I can't honestly say for sure right now where this is going to how this is going to affect the electorate. But one of the other things I wanted to say, and I'm sorry I have to go back up to Harry, I need to say, I agree with John completely. I don't think that it's fair to say that the judges are going to be making decisions, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. I don't think that we've seen that. And I think that we need to be fair, and we need to let the Supreme Court have the respect that it deserves, whether they're Republican appointed judges or Democrat appointed judges, until they show something different to us. And I don't think it's fair for you to sit there and start calling it out now. And it's not fair to represent that to the people watching the show. So I needed to get that out there as well. And I'm sorry I needed to say that, but I really did. I didn't find that. I was very offended by what you said.
Harry, I want to give you a chance to respond.
May I respond, please? Yeah. That's a completely silly point. Everybody knows, and this is the whole idea, that whether it's a Trump-appointed judge, whether it's a Merrick Garland, or whether it's a Neil Gorsuch matters hugely. Their judicial philosophy matters hugely. If what Lisa said were right even a scintilla, then of course we wouldn't care if it were a Trump or a Biden making the appointment. It's a fatuous notion to think that who appoints them just doesn't matter. The results are going to matter. There's a likelihood of Roe v. Wade being overturned. There's a likelihood of many things on the ground affecting, and to suggest that judges are just computers and it doesn't matter who appoints them completely contradicts history and what anybody with any sense in the debate thinks at all.
No, and I'm not saying, thank you for that. And my name's Tina, by the way, not Lisa. So that's something important to note.
I'm sorry.
And I'm in
Tina.
no way,
Yes, I agree.
I'm not, yeah. So, okay, I'm speaking as to what results have come out in the last 3 years where you've been able to say that the court has been unfair. We've had a conservative judge that was appointed that's been siding with on the liberal side of the bench, Justice Roberts, in many different ways. And we have no idea, this court, how it will look at issues going forward. And you can't definitely sit there and say, well, now it's over.
That's simply false. It's the, yeah. No, that's not. The reason you appoint these people is because you have some idea, not 100%, but some idea how they'll vote going forward, of course.
If I could jump in.
John, since we are in the final stretches, let me just get your take on who you think will succeed Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Some names obviously are being openly debated out there. You're an insider. Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, as I like to say, my crystal ball unfortunately broke yesterday. I think it is likely to be Amy Coney Barrett, who's a known entity. But I've heard great things about Barbara Lagoa. She's been a judge for 14 years and has issued hundreds of opinions. So if she's the nominee, and she very well might be, I look forward to reading those opinions and getting to know more about her.
Tina, go ahead. You were about to say something.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had cut you off there. Harry, how do you think this is going to play out? Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it's Amy Coney Barrett. She checks all the boxes of the people whose views Trump has followed in the other two appointments, and who has been able to point to what, for him, probably the only successful thing. It's been very good to sort of change the discussion from COVID, but I've got actually an op-ed coming out today in the LA Times that is making this point. I think it's clearly she's in the pole position, let me put it that way. And he, in fact, met with her for a couple hours yesterday. I think he's pretty much persuaded.
John, do you think this will be a very decisive issue? This will keep the American public engaged now between now and November 3rd?
Well, I certainly think it will. As my friends have said, we've had an October surprise. It's not even October yet. One thing that's been pointed out, of course, is that people are already voting in certain states. And I don't know how many undecided voters there are out there, and really all that matters is what's going to happen in a few swing states. It's not going to be in the state where Harry is, and it's not going to be in the District of Columbia where I am, but there are a handful of swing states where it's going to matter a lot, and this will be one of many issues that the voters will have topmost of mind when they decide what to do in the polling booth, or what they do as they lick the stamp to send in their ballots.
Well, if the confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh are any indication, certainly this is going to be quite heated, that's for sure. Harry Litman, John Malcolm, Tina Datta, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your insights in this subject matter. And thank you out there for watching. Hope to see you again next time.